All right. Good morning and afternoon, depending where you are. Thank you for joining PCLA today for Let's Talk Parkinson's. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So this is Parkinson's Community Los Angeles. We're a Los Angeles-based nonprofit with the goal to connect individuals and families to information, support, programs, and activities they need to enhance their wellness and live an active, engaged life. I'm Laura Kurtenbach. I'm a board member with PCLA, and I'll be your moderator today. So now I'd like to introduce Patrick Lasasso. He is a personal trainer and certified strength and conditioning specialist who is internationally recognized as an authority on exercise for Parkinson's. His SMART XPD system employs techniques used by the athletic trainers and physical therapists to help improve function for those living with Parkinson's. Patrick's proactive and positive approach encourages people with Parkinson's to fight back by maintaining a comprehensive exercise program that addresses these symptoms directly. Patrick has advocated for people with Parkinson's for over 15 years and has served as president of PCLA since its beginning. Let's welcome Patrick. You there, Patrick?
Hello.
Can we see Patrick's
screen? Silent clap, golf clap. Thank you.
Want to share your screen, Patrick?
Yeah, let me see if I can get this going. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Let's see here. All right. Let me put our slides here on the side so I can see my screen so I know what I'm talking about. Well, good morning, everybody. As Laura said, my name is Patrick Lasasso. I'm a trainer who works with people with Parkinson's disease. And I've been doing this for, oh gosh, probably close to 20 years now, working with people with Parkinson's. And this was a great opportunity for me to kind of collect my thoughts, put them all together on a presentation, PowerPoint, and try to convey to you some of the concepts that I've found to be successful and useful for working with people with Parkinson's. Parkinson's is a tough diagnosis, but the good news is that proper exercise can really help and really make a difference. And one of the things I like to say is I've seen small changes make big differences. And that's very, very true with exercise. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about what exercise is, what activity is, which is maybe not exercise, how to create an exercise program for yourself, and how Parkinson's exercise sort of distinguishes itself from normal exercise. So let's just go ahead and see if I can jump right in here. Why is it not like, there we go. So I have this slide. I did a presentation before to a group, and it was a little more broad, but I wanted just to introduce this as an opening slide on how to optimize your quality of life. And this stuff, it goes beyond exercise. I'm not going to get into that stuff because my scope of practice is purely exercise. That's my wheelhouse. But these are 5 things that I've discovered, if you want to live optimally, that you should be aware of and maintain. The first one, of course, is your medical team, making sure you have the best doctors you can find in the area, making sure you have a neurologist that knows Parkinson's, hopefully a fellowship-trained movement disorder neurologist. Once you get that parked away, there are 4 other things that are real important that can then help. Number 2, of course, you can see them all up here, nutrition. We want to eat right. We want to eat healthy. We don't want to eat junk food. Third, what we'll be talking about here is exercise. So you want to be maintaining and incorporating an appropriate exercise program. Now, this 4th one I've started adding because it is really, really important, and that is sleep hygiene. You really have to make sure you're getting 7 or 8 hours. Now, I put per day here. Sometimes people have trouble falling asleep or they wake up and they don't get quite 8 hours, 7 or 8 hours during the night, but napping can count as well. We want to get a total of 7 or 8 hours per day to help you live healthy, to help your body recover and recuperate from your exercise program, which you're maintaining. And then the 5 that I list is your mental health, making sure you have someone to talk to. A diagnosis of Parkinson's is difficult enough, but some of the non-motor symptoms can weigh heavily on people, and it's important to know that. Depression is one of the things that can happen, so if you're feeling a little down, it could be the disease on top of everything else. So just be aware of that. Make sure you have someone to talk to. There are support groups out there. They're not really great for everybody, but there is education and sources and social workers and people that know Parkinson's and can help out in that department. So I just wanted to briefly skim over. Those are 5 categories that you should be aware of: identify, name, and maintain to optimally live your life. We're going to dig in now to the exercise portion of it. Now, Parkinson's, as you know, has both motor and non-motor symptoms, and the good news is that exercise has been reported to help with both. I made a real short list here. I guess we're going to have, I think you'll be able to access this PowerPoint. There are more motor symptoms, but these are the main ones I really see on a regular basis. You've got your slowness, your tremor, sometimes your dyskinesias. Stiffness is very common, and stiffness can cause muscle pain as well, and weakness. Stiffness can cause weakness. Postural instability is a big one. In my work, I talk about posture very often. Understanding what proper posture is, learning how to practice it, and how to train the body to return to a proper, open, healthy, tall posture position is very important, even if you are in the chair. Yes, posture is important, even if you are in a wheelchair or chair bound. Balance is another motor symptom that can cause issues. Trouble with moving or walking. Freezing. Freezing is the next one on the list here. Freezing can occur. The good news about freezing is that there are tricks and techniques you can discover to break the freeze more quickly. We won't get into that here, but if you are experiencing that, take heart in the fact that there are ways to break that freeze and hopefully get out of it quicker. And of course, small movements is another motor symptom. It can restrict things. Things become very small and focused. The posture part of it bringing you down in towards the floor. Some of you might have noticed that or seen that. So that's a motor symptom. The non-motor, I put these 2 first, stress and anxiety, because those 2 are non-motor symptoms that can actually exacerbate the other symptoms, both motor and non-motor, that are going on. There's depression, cognitive changes, fatigue, sleep disorders. I touched on that as something that you really want to be aware of. If you're having trouble with that, starting an exercise program can help. You can also talk to your doctor and see if they have ideas for you. And then dizziness or vertigo can happen, as well as constipation. And exercise can actually help with constipation as well. So I threw this in here because I get this a lot, and I thought I would address it. Does exercise cure Parkinson's? And unfortunately, there is currently no cure for Parkinson's. And I wanted to mention this because one of the things I've seen that has driven me nuts, you got to be aware of false claims. They're all over the internet. There are teas that cure Parkinson's. There's a guy who wrote a book who says he's cured his Parkinson's by performing a walking program. We got somebody. I think we got somebody unmuted, but maybe Sarah Judy can hunt him down and mute him. But I wanted to mention this because you need to be aware that there's a predatory industry out there making promises and preying on people that are really desperate for something to help or something to cure. So just be aware of that. Right now, unfortunately, like I said, there's currently no cure for Parkinson's, but there's good news in that exercise has been shown to actually slow the progression of the disease. Now, when I first started doing this, this was a tough question to answer because there wasn't all that much study. They suspected that Parkinson's responded very well to exercise, but now there's been a lot more information. And this, actually, I'll just read this. Preclinical work demonstrates that exercise has protective effects on the brain cells. So there's a neuroprotective quality that accompanies exercise, which is great. It boosts trophic factors, which are like fertilizer for brain cells, and increases the number and activity of mitochondria, the cell's energy source. It also helps you use the dopamine in your brain that it already has more effectively. And many of you know dopamine is the brain chemical. It's a neurotransmitter responsible for the movement that decreases and is affected by Parkinson's disease. Clinical studies also suggest that symptoms may progress more slowly in people who exercise, and how great is it to hear that. And this I got actually from the Michael J. Fox website. I'll also just say as a cautionary note again, vet your sources. Don't just go on the internet and start searching for stuff. Make sure that the articles you're reading are under the umbrella of maybe MD or something that is reputable, that you've heard of before, because like I said, there's tons of stuff out there that they're selling that they claim can help and has not been vetted or approved. So there are promising exercise studies on Parkinson's, which is great. There are clinical trials on Parkinson's and exercise published as recently as November 29th of 2019 that talks about intense exercise improved motor functions in PD. They actually took some sedentary, I think it was like 130 people that were living sedentary lives. They did a test of their motor functions and then put them through an exercise program. And at the end of that test, they improved significantly. There's a news release on current studies. The results showed that intense exercise was safe and delayed worsening of Parkinson's symptoms, which is such as loss of muscle control, trembling, stiffness and slowness, and impaired balance. And this is a quote from the article: several lines of evidence point to a beneficial effect of exercise in Parkinson's disease. And that was the program director of the U.S. National Institute of Neurological Disorders and Stroke, another very reputable source. So we're going to get into definitions of exercise. I'm going to get through this as quickly as I can because I want to do a little routine afterwards, but I think it's important to have a baseline of understanding of what is exercise. And I'm going to jam through that right now. So what is exercise? So defining exercise may reduce your anxiety and increase your chances of beginning an exercise program. The word exercise has all these connotations. You know, when we say exercise, we hear exercise, we think about these ads on TV with these people sweating, drenching the sweat over treadmills at the gym. It's not that important to go that hard. So here's our definition of exercise: a repeated or sustained movement or action that tasks the body to an intensity level higher than normal. Exercise increases the heart rate, improves strength, flexibility, posture, balance, and function. For an action to qualify as exercise, it must be sustained, measured or measurable, and, real important here, progressive. So in other words, if you were to walk 5 minutes, that can be exercise. You've timed it. Now I can add another 2 minutes onto it, and then it becomes progressive. Okay, here's the big one. What is activity? A lot of you are going to be bummed out when you hear this. Shopping is not exercise. So, definition of activity: any action or task performed during the day necessary to accomplish the requirements of daily living. Activities differ from exercise in that they are not sustained nor inherently progressive in nature. Now, that doesn't mean that activity is bad. It's good to get out, get our bodies into a new environment, feel the air on our skin, go shopping, get the endorphins going. That's all very valuable, but it's not your exercise program. Here are some common forms of activity: shopping, as I had mentioned, going to work or school, meeting a friend for coffee, cleaning the house, or going to appointments. Those are all activities. Unfortunately, you can't use those as a checkbox for exercise, at least not after today. How can you make an activity become an exercise? Oh, you mean I can make my walk become exercise? Yes, and I'm going to give you 2 examples here. So by making an activity sustained or measurable, you can transition an everyday activity into exercise by making it incremental and progressive. Here's an example. An individual walks to the bus stop at the end of their street every day, hopefully with a mask on. By walking around the block before they arrive at their stop, this walk becomes exercise. So they walk around the block. As their endurance improves, they leave a little earlier and they can add another lap around the block. So they have a walk now that they're doing. They're going to work, they're getting up a little bit earlier, riding the bus, whatever, and they've transitioned an activity before that into a measurable activity and make it exercise. Here's another quick example. An individual goes to an appointment in a building that has a flight of 18 steps up to the front door. By arriving a few minutes early, they can jump up and down the stairs twice before entering the building. You can measure that. That's exercise. And you can make it progressive. Next time you come, you do 3. So I'm going to just briefly go over this. You guys are probably already sold on it because you showed up today, but it's important to know this because it'll help with adherence. So this is some of the physiological and emotional benefits of exercise. It makes your activities of daily living easier to perform. It can reduce your anxiety or stress. It can also create fatigue after your workout, but overall, it'll reduce your fatigue. It can improve your sleep. It can reduce back and neck pain and reduces the risk of heart attack or diabetes. It can prevent the onset of other illnesses aside from Parkinson's. It can improve your mood, happiness, and reduce depression. It improves memory and cognition. It can also improve balance and very, very importantly, can reduce the risk of falls. And as I'm reading this, I'm realizing there's another really important one that I left off that can occur if you're doing an exercise class, and that is socialization. I need to add that because that is incredibly important. Many people with Parkinson's tend to withdraw within themselves, stay home, and that's not good for your emotional life. Getting out and meeting people, doing an exercise class is a great way to increase your socialization and meet people that share the same stresses and anxieties and fears and successes and struggles that you do. So I really encourage you to get out of the house and join an exercise class. Socialization. Okay, this is a cute little puppy dog. Doesn't have anything to do with the presentation. I just thought I'd put it in there, make sure that you're still paying attention. So there are a couple Parkinson specific exercise programs that I just wanted to name. You might be aware of them, or you might have heard of them. The LSVT Big program. There's a Power program that's really great by a doctor of physical therapy out of Arizona named Becky Farley. There's the Rock Steady Boxing. Boxing has become a huge craze for people with Parkinson's and a great metaphor for fighting back. There's the Delay the Disease by David Zid. Dancing through Parkinson's. Dancing is a really great form of exercise. Plus is another program. My program, Smart XPD, I figured it's my list. I'll throw my name in there. And then I wanted to make an honorable mention of a guy named John Argue, who was probably the first one going out there, published a book on the art of movement for Parkinson's. So I wanted to name him as well. Okay, so my brand I mentioned before is Smart XPD, and it's an acronym for some of the pillars or the concepts that I use in my approach to exercise. So it's S is strength, M mobility, agility, reaction, very important, technique, and then of course exercise for Parkinson's disease. Thus, I created my brand and my name and my concept to exercise and named it Smart XPD. So exercise can really be divided into three general types or categories. I'm just going to quickly go over those so that you're aware of them. The first one would be strength and flexibility training. I put those two together. Resistance training, yoga, or high intensity interval training would be examples of that. You've got your cardiovascular or aerobic training, which is great. Very important to maintain that. Examples are biking, swimming, hiking, or walking. And then you have the type of exercise that I've been really consumed with, which is skill-based exercise. Examples of that are boxing. I actually started my work as a trainer teaching boxing, and I still use it with many of my Parkinson's folks. Boxing, tennis, ping pong, martial arts, dancing, those are skill-based exercise forms. And let me contrast it just to give a deeper explanation of that. Cardiovascular is really important. Now imagine going off on a walk or a bike ride into the wilderness, and it's great. You can kind of check out, your mind can wander, you're getting your heart rate up, and it's great. But what you're missing is skill. It doesn't take any skill to walk, really, or to ride a bike. I mean, eventually it can, but for the sake of this discussion, you can kind of mindlessly go about doing it. But we want to have that brain-body connection reinforced, and skill-based exercise does that. How much do I need to exercise? I get this all the time. So the American College of Sports Medicine recommends 150 minutes of exercise per week. So that's about 30 minutes, 5 days a week. More is better, but this seems to be the sweet spot. Now, this is for your average person. If you're a person with Parkinson's can actually do that, that's great, but many of us can't. And I found this little blurb here from the Parkinson's Foundation, which I felt really said it well, so I just took it and presented it here. So there is no exercise prescription that is right for every person with Parkinson's disease. And I love that line. It's so true. The type of exercise you do depends on your symptoms and challenges. For sedentary people, just getting up and moving is beneficial. More active people can build up to a regular, vigorous activity, and many approaches work well to help maintain, improve mobility, flexibility, and balance to ease non-motor Parkinson's symptoms, the non-motor ones we talked about earlier, such as depression or constipation. There you go, Parkinson's Foundation, another great source for information. So here we go. This was the theme of the talk. How does Parkinson's exercise differ from regular exercise? The answer, now I've been thinking about this for years. So the answer is they're largely similar, but the emphasis or priorities differ slightly. So I'm going to go over this. Laura, when you get a chance, give me a time. Let me know how we're doing on time. So if you have an exercise program, you want to have a component of it really focusing on your postural awareness and understanding. You got to understand perfect posture. And you want to incorporate exercises that improve and address that and help you create muscle memory to be able to understand and return and preserve your posture. Broad, expansive movements. LSVT speed, LSVT big program started doing this first, probably incorporating big, large, flowing movements to kind of break or shatter that Parkinson's body that can occur. So incorporating big and expansive movements, that's great for regular people too, but we want to focus on that with Parkinson's a lot. Speed drills. Bradykinesia is I mentioned this earlier, it's slowness of movement. So incorporating speed that is safe and controlled is a great concept, and you would want that in your Parkinson's exercise program. Here's one of my favorite, reaction and response practice. So getting an individual to respond and activate to an external cue, a ball going at them, trying to slap their hand, something like that. Making something unpredictable that requires them to activate and accelerate movement. Really important. Here's another one that's I like to use quite a bit. It's combining gross motor function with fine motor function. So gross motor is like large joint activity, like a squat. Full body would be an example of gross motor. A fine motor would be catching a tennis ball or turning a page or something like that. So combining gross motor and fine motor to see if you can control both of them, I find, and I use often, I find to be very useful. Okay, another real important one, and nobody talks about this, but they should. Implementation of task sequencing challenges. So important for people with Parkinson's, task sequencing. So as Parkinson's progresses, it can become sloppy and messy, the movements can. So integrating tasks that begin, pause, another task starting, and then returning is really important. And identifying that neurological event or moment when we're stopping an activity, starting another, and then returning. Practicing that delineation and that moment of switching is really important, I believe, that will inform an individual's activities of daily living. I'll just give you one example, getting into a car. I hear that is a real hard issue for some. Task sequencing is a way of achieving that. You have to understand how to do it. First of all, you have to get to the car. First task, open the door. Second task. Third task, position yourself so you can sit, etc. So if you've put the task sequencing into your exercise, those types of activities and actions, those stopping and starting and turning and all of those little things that are required to successfully perform a complicated activity of daily living will be that much easier. So multitasking or layering, that's a controversial one. Some people say there's no such thing as multitasking, but I like to think there is. An example of that would be I put my client on a recumbent bike, which is a bike that you perform seated, and they're pedaling along, and then I introduce some other type of activity like a bicep curl or shoulder press as they are pedaling. So that's an example of multitasking that can really kind of help with neuroplasticity and coordination. And then mindful movement, which kind of applies to skill-based exercise. I'm aware, I'm present in the moment, I know what I'm trying to do, and I am focused on doing it. Mindful movement in a different way, like if we're taking a walk, we're being mindful because we're walking, we're letting our mind wander, but focusing on task, mindful movement is something that I've found to be very, very important, which has led me to this phrase.
Hey, Patrick, real quick, you have 15 minutes since you asked.
Okay, so 15 minutes from now or from then?
From now.
Okay, great, good, we should be able to get through this. I hope I'm not boring anyone. So exercising with mindfulness. Now listen to this kind of carefully. We want to move with understanding, specificity, and intention. We want to move with understanding, specificity, intention during our workout when it is appropriate and when we can. So maybe if we're taking a walk or a bike ride, it wouldn't be as important. But if we were doing a strength training routine with task sequencing, it would. Understanding. I understand the task or exercise being assigned to me. So you understand what you're being asked to do. 2, specificity. I'm going to attempt to perform this exactly as it's been prescribed. Exactly it's been described for me. I'm going to perform it perfectly with specificity. And the last, intention. I'm not simply just moving a limb from point A to point B, and we'll go over this in the, we're going to have time for this, so we're going to go over this in our exercise. I'm moving it and focusing on it through the entire path. I'm moving with intention. I'm bringing my hand from here to here, from here to here, with intention. I'm mindful. I'm paying attention to it. So I found that concept of moving with understanding, specificity, and intention an important concept to layer into your exercise. So I'm not here to sell DVDs or anything. I'm here to kind of provide some education, but I do have a line of products that I wanted to briefly tell you about. And I also have, the first one I want to start with is my YouTube channel because it's free. I've got about 80 videos on it. I've got 6,000 subscribers, over 700,000 views. I started shooting videos probably 7 years ago now, and I love it because I'm now able to speak with people and work with people all over the world. And I get some great comments and suggestions and feedback, and it's kind of that YouTube channel is my way of kind of reaching out into the world and finding people that need help, that have different issues, and the people that I'm locally based with. It's free. I've got tons of stuff up there. I've got practical lessons. I've got lessons on how to get out of a chair. Okay, let me just briefly say this as well. Parkinson's makes things that we learn to do without being taught difficult. Parkinson's makes things we learn to do without being taught difficult, like getting out of a chair, like rolling over in bed, getting into a car, sitting down into a chair. So we need to break those things down, understand them, and practice them the same way each time. And my YouTube channel has a couple of videos, how to get up off the ground. It shows you a system of that, like I said, how to get out of the chair, how to get down into a chair. That's a great example of GPS, I'm sorry. It's a great example of task sequencing, sitting down in a chair. And if you want to look for that one, I call it GPS. Stands for get there, position, sit. So there are 3 things you need to do when you're sitting down. First of all, you got to get to the chair. That's your first task. Second is you're going to turn around. And then the third task is to actually check for the chair, make sure it's there and sit down. So that's up there on the YouTube channel. There's things like themed like that that are really useful. I've got workouts on there. I now teach in a free online exercise class 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I think it's listed on our referral on PCLA, our website. And I've edited one of those, and one of those are up on the YouTube channel as well. So if you wanted to get a sample of what my classes are like, you could check that out. I also have a website, smartxpd.com, that has a bunch of articles and videos as well. And I have a on-demand platform that has every DVD program that I've ever created all on that platform. You can either do a monthly base or an annual base subscription, and it has everything I've ever done. And the list down here, the corner right, are the DVD programs that I've put together that are available on Amazon. All that stuff is on the Amazon, the SmartXPD platform. And I add new stuff to that monthly as well. So that's a little bit about me and how my stuff can help possibly start with the free stuff. There's a lot of stuff up there. And become a subscriber, and then anytime I post a new one, you'll be aware of it. And here's a cute little kitten. So I want to be equal opportunity for pet owners. So we're going to close here with a cute little kitten. And I want to thank everyone for your time. And I hope you enjoyed the presentation. If you have questions, there's my phone number and there's my email. I'm pretty responsive to emails and phone calls. So, and it's not an imposition. Please feel free to reach out to me. If you are struggling with something, or you have some ideas you wanted to share, or you wanted my opinion on something, I'd be happy to speak with you. So that's my presentation. I hope you liked it. And I guess we're going to do a little movement. Is that right, Laura?
That's correct. About 10 minutes before we start Q&A. So you got 10 minutes to show some moves off.
Oh, awesome. I got full 10 minutes. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to actually move this chair back. This is where I do the exercise classes, actually. Oh, let me reposition.
Yeah, take down your presentation too, Patrick.
Oh, yeah. Okay. How do I do that? Let me just do that first. Stop sharing. Okay. All right. Am I back on screen?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Just give me a minute here to kind of lower this and lower the camera down a little bit. Okay. All right. So I'm going to show you a little stretching routine I developed here that was based on my daughter's May's developmental movements. It's one of my favorites to kind of explain or to demonstrate that with not too much work, you can actually notice a difference in the way you feel. So for those of you that know me, you know I have two little girls. They're now 5, Kate and May, and watching them develop from when they first propped their head up and looked around, first weight-bearing joint to your shoulders as a child, then they rolled over, then they crawled, and it was very interesting because kids crawl in what I call a reciprocal pattern, which is, believe it or not, your normal gait pattern, the way you walk. So crawling actually is a great exercise. I use it with a lot of my my clients. But watching them grow up and go through these developmental patterns have been really inspiring. And so I was working with May on the table. I was probably changing her diaper or something. And she was 6 months old and she was moving around and she, didn't have control of her limbs as babies will do. And she kind of went like this. And then she went like that. And I'm like, something looks familiar. I grabbed my camera and I filmed it. And what I watched she was doing is she was going into a gait pattern before she could even roll over. So this is a little routine I developed based on May's movement. So we're going to be in the chair. I encourage everyone watching just to try this. But before we do it, I want you to kind of assess your baseline. I want you to just kind of sit there and check in on yourself. See how you feel. Do you have tension in your shoulders and your back? Any pain? Feel your feet flat on the floor. Take a couple of breaths. Feel how your chest feels. Feel how your lungs feel. Just just give yourself a grade or just assess how you feel, because we're going to go and do that again after this quick, simple routine. So in order to get the most out of this, I got to get you to really commit to this. So I'll try to give you a couple of cues. First of all, I want you to establish a nice tall position on the front of your chair, on the edge of your chair, and get yourself nice and tall and upright with a perfect posture. Go ahead and take your middle finger and tap the crown of your head real hard. Take the other hand, tap your clavicle. I've never done these both at the same time. We'll give it a try. Harder. Now go ahead and put your hands down, and you still feel those hot spots, right? We're going to take that clavicle area, you're going to tilt it up, and you're going to take the little top of your head, attach a string to it, and pull yourself up nice and tall. There you are, nice and tall. Now, take your right hand and lift it up overhead, and with your palm facing forward, and take your left hand and put it down. And what I want you to imagine doing, sitting up nice and tall and straight in the chair, is to pull your hand, the backs of your hands almost behind you. Really fire those posterior muscles. Now, some of you may have shoulder issues. Stay in a pain-free range of motion. Don't crank your joints up to get to this. You hear that, Sandy? Watch your shoulder there, sir. Yeah, pull back and stay in a pain-free range of motion if you have limitations. So what I'm going to have you do now is go ahead and lift your right leg and press. Wait a minute, am I doing this? Yes, no. You're going to raise your left leg. I never done this with me up big on the screen before. I can see myself and it's confusing me. You're going to lift your left leg up and you're going to press your right foot firmly into the ground. Firmly tighten all your muscles, pull those hands back. Now gently release, bring your hands forward, tap your fingertips twice, and raise the left hand, lower the right hand, pull it back to your hands behind you. Now slowly lift your left leg here and press your right foot firmly into the floor. And breathe. We're all breathing through all of this. My hands are open wide. I'm pulling the backs of my hands behind me. Bring them back to center. Touch your fingertips twice. Drop the hands. Raise the arms out to the side as you bring your legs out to the side, and bring the backs of your hands up overhead. Now I know some of you are probably like this, slump forward. Up tall. Pull your hands up. You should feel some tension in the shoulders there. Breathe again. Release that. Bring your feet back together. Lean forward from the hip. Hinge from the hip. Bring your palms up, and you're going to throw yourself up back to a nice tall seated position as you externally rotate your upper arms into one of my favorite stretches for Parkinson's. This is called, it's the most aptly named stretch. It's called the no money stretch. And that's the third part of this short little routine. So we're going to do this again. Right hand up, left hand down. Pull the hands behind you, slightly lift up that left leg and push the right foot into the floor. This foot is pushing down into the floor. Release, bring the fingertips together, tap them twice. Other side, and go ahead and lift the right leg up. Press the left foot firmly into the floor, pushing that down into the floor. Pull those hands back, release, hands in front, tap the fingertips twice, lower the hands. Legs out to the side, backs of the palms to each other. Bring your feet back together, hinge forward from the hip, palms up. Throw yourself up into the no money stretch, and we're gonna do it one more time. And this time we're gonna flow right through it. So there won't be any pauses. So try to stay with me. Right hand up, left hand down. Pull them apart, lift up that right leg and tap. Other side. Lift the left leg, press the foot into the floor, tap, breathe, hands down, arms out overhead, tap the backs of the knuckles together, bring them back together, palms up, throw yourself into the no money stretch. Again, right hand up, left hand down, raise the left leg, lower, tap twice, up, good, tap twice, hands down, out to the sides, backs of the palms, feet back together, hinge forward at the hip, palms up. No money, and I promise this is the last one. Right hand up, left hand down, up, tap, up, tap, hands down, legs out, arms out, backs of the knuckles, tap, hinge forward, and no money. Breathe, big breath in, and release. Okay, I want you to check back in with your body. I'm hoping that you feel like I do, a little more alert, a little more present, a little more open, a little more activated. It's a simple little routine, but if you really commit to it, you kind of feel like you've done something. And it's a refreshing routine. It doesn't take all that much time. And actually, this one's up on my YouTube. So if you liked it and you wanted to go see it again, because I don't expect you to remember that, you can go fish through and find that. It's an example of, I like to use it as an example of how you can actually feel better with a short little routine. You don't have to go to the gym for an hour and sprint on the treadmill. I hope you enjoyed that. I don't know how much time we have left. Laura, how much time do we have left? I'll figure something else out to do real quick.
We actually should probably jump into Q&A because we have 2 minutes left in the call, and I want to make sure that we take any questions that people have. So are you ready for some Q&A? And before we dive in, as the eye in the sky watching everyone, it was great to see everyone on camera, even though Patrick might not be able to see it, doing this exercise along with him, which was awesome. So good job, everyone, for participating. I started to, and then had to look at some questions to make sure we had them in order. So Patrick, thank you again. We do have some great questions. We're going to start with the ones from email and from our social pages.
Okay.
So there's one that I've heard a lot from, people who have parents with Parkinson's or loved ones, etc. And this is from Sherry. My 84-year-old dad is really struggling daily with exercise and movement because it is so hard for him. Any tips to keep him moving? He wants to lay in the recliner most of the day.
Sherry, thank you for that awesome, awesome question. And the reason it's awesome is because I hear it so often. So thank you for letting me have the opportunity to address it. It's not uncommon for this to happen. Some people just from the beginning were not very athletic and not motivated. As I talked about non-motor issues, there's apathy, there's depression, which all can also interfere with wanting to start an exercise program. I've been hearing this question ever since I started this work. And about, I don't know, 7 years ago, I was talking to a woman in the Midwest who had the same question. And she said, if I could just get my husband to do 3 minutes of your exercise, I know he'd like it. I hung up the phone and I thought, wow, that's it. And that was the inspiration for my 5-minute workout DVD. And that's kind of like the entry that I recommend for people that, how should I start? And, but what I would say is not to get the DVD, but to get them to do something. What you need to do is convince your husband that even a little bit of movement can make a difference. Maybe something to try is put a tennis ball next to his chair. Just put a tennis ball next to his chair and see what he does. Is he toss it around back and forth, or encourage him to do something? Really, it's a tough nut to crack because of the non-motor symptoms and the motivational issue. But really what you need to somehow do is give him a glimpse into the way he can make a difference by becoming proactive in the disease. And I'm sorry, I can't be more helpful than that. But really, I guess the answer is to try to get him to do something. Tell him, look, just give me 3 minutes. 3 minutes of something, and give him something to do. And do it again. Maybe just do that 3 times a week. And then creep in it 4 times a week, or creep in an extra minute. We're gonna do another 3 minutes, and instead of 3 minutes, sneak in 4 minutes. You gotta kind of, if you can work with him, I don't know what your relationship is with him, but you gotta get him to start. And once they see that they can make a difference and become proactive, then the light, the switch gets flicked, and then you can encourage them along the way to something else. Also, maybe hearing it from another source as well. Maybe you could talk to his doctor while you're at the meeting. You know, he doesn't like to exercise. Can you talk to him about the importance of that? Hearing it from another source might be helpful too.
Great. And that rolls into a question that we had from James. What are the core exercises you recommend people living with Parkinson's to do on a daily basis?
Okay, so that sort of assumes a false premise that I could give you 3 exercises and that's what you could do. But I get the question. Let me answer it by saying it's best to have a diverse approach to exercise, to have a couple of different disciplines that you find that you like. The most important thing is something that you'll return to. So, I mean, if you liked a rowing machine, if you liked biking, if you like strength training, those would all be things you would fall into one of those 3 categories I talked about earlier that you could try. I will share with you that I do love a couple of exercises. I love push-ups, which I also love the bear crawl. And I love a seated row. A seated row is like if you have a resistance band and you pull it towards you and puff out your chest. I don't like bench press. It's wasted for people with Parkinson's. That's why I like push-ups. You can do modified push-ups, which would be on your knees. But if you only had a little bit of time, I would do large motor groups, muscle groups. I would do an arm and chest exercise like a push-up. I would do a row. How could you do a row? You could wrap a towel around a pole and pull yourself up. And then I'd do something like a squat. So if you had 3 exercises, those are 3 great exercises, but I would also stretch afterwards. I would have to creep some other stuff in. It's a hard question for me to answer, but those are 3 things that, depending on your level of ability, would be a good choice if you were just gonna do 3 exercises.
Great. We also have Jeannie. Does exercise create new neurons in the brain?
So, great question. The answer is they think that it does. It creates new white matter. I read a study, and I don't know if I pulled it out of the presentation. There's a study you can look up on juggling. And they took a couple of people that were like, I don't remember what the group was, but they studied the effects. They did a brain scan before and after, and practicing juggling increased brain cell activity. Now, you're probably asking it because you want to know if you can create more brain cells that create dopamine, which is the neurotransmitter. So I don't know about that, but exercise has neuroprotective qualities as well. That's why most doctors now, neurologists, are recommending to make sure that you're doing something with exercise to keep the brain as healthy as possible. And it makes sense if you think about the way the disease progresses, which is typically slowly. If you're in better shape, you're better poised or positioned to be able to address or fight back these symptoms that occur. So you got to be somewhat of a Parkinson's athlete. You got to get your body ready for what may occur. I hope that helps.
Awesome. And then we have an offline question as well, is how important is strength training for Parkinson's?
It's one of my favorite modes of exercise, and everyone I work with does it, whether they like to or not. So even in the I've seen a lot of things that occur with the Parkinson's body that happen in the natural person that doesn't have neurological involvement, their body. When you start a strength training program, you're going to get an immediate bump of up to 30% improvement in strength because of neural adaptation that occurs, and it occurs with people with Parkinson's too. Before you even develop another muscle fiber, by doing a resistance training, strength training program, which is comprised of repetitions in sets, you will activate muscle fibers that are dormant, sitting on your body, and that's for everyone, that are sitting on your body and not being recruited. Starting an exercise strength training program will immediately give you a bump in strength over the course of maybe 6 weeks. I don't know, immediate is that 6 weeks, maybe even before. Yes, strength training is very important. Strength training, flexibility, cardiovascular, and then of course skill-based exercise. I need that mind-body connection happening all the time. Okay.
Awesome. And then we have one from our chat from Benny, is like how to handle the progression of an exercise, since it eventually has to be limited, like how much to increase time or difficulty.
Okay, so that gets back to there's no direct prescription because everyone with Parkinson's is subtly different, sometimes largely different. But I will talk in general terms how you can progress an exercise. You can progress, let's add a bicep curl, which is real simple. You can progress that a couple different ways. You could add more weight, you could add more repetitions, you could add more sets, or you could add more body parts. You could combine that bicep curl with maybe a step back lunge. I'll just do one quickly. Depending on your balance, if you have balance, obviously you have it here. So I've gotten ready for my bicep curl and I want to progress it. So I'm going to do a step back lunge. Here's a progression for a bicep curl. So I'm adding other body parts. That's another way to progress it. So the obvious ways, adding your weight, adding repetitions, adding sets, but you can also progress it by adding more body parts as well.
Awesome. And we have a question from Marty. How best to assure a person with PD stays safe while exercising at home with videos and virtual classes?
Marty, as usual, great question. Thank you. So that's so important. To remain safe. During my classes, I try to make sure that people that have balance issues go conservatively. And let me answer that by saying, you don't have to jump, you don't have to run, you don't have to sprint, you don't have to kill yourself through exercise to affect a change. The way I approach exercise is more conservatively. I don't want to bring someone that comes to me and work them so hard that they can't move the rest of the afternoon and they feel terrible the next day. I start very conservatively, and I've had a lot of success with that. So my recommendation is you've got to monitor yourself, and you have to be very careful. If you have balance issues, you maybe want to have someone that is capable of supporting you in case you lose your balance with you. You maybe want to start in the chair. You maybe want to have a sturdy stabilizing object nearby that even though you feel like you don't need it, you're going to keep your hand on as you're getting used to the movement and the exercise that you're trying. Exercise has an inherent risk of injury. You're doing stuff. You're up, you're around. So sometimes people get injured when they exercise. The best way to do it, especially with someone with Parkinson's, is to have someone there with you that is strong enough to catch you if you fall, or if you don't, to do it in the chair or be conservative.
Excellent. And we have time for one last question. So I'm going to toss it out to the audience for a verbal question. So if you have a verbal question, please unmute yourself and say your first name and ask your one question, please. Anybody?
I'll unmute myself. Why aren't there more questions?
Oh, there are. I just wanted to give the audience a
I'm
chance.
kidding. I'm just teasing. Yeah, so I'm president of PCLA. I'm on the board with all of these wonderful people. So we wanted to make sure that those of you that maybe had trouble typing would be able to take yourself off mute and use your voice. So if anybody has some questions, otherwise maybe we'll go back to another one.
Yeah.
What do you think of Tai Chi?
Great. It's a great. That's a great example of a movement discipline that is skill based, and it also addresses. I'm imitating Tai Chi. I don't know anything about Tai Chi, but it would address that movement of understanding specificity and intention. In fact, in your mind's eye, if you're watching Tai Chi, that may actually be, if you can remember how people move, that might be the single best visualization of that concept I talked about moving with understanding, specificity, and intention. They are present through every move. They're not moving from point A to point B. It's great. I would supplement it with something a little higher intense as well.
Like what?
You know, boxing. Okay, there, I said it. Maybe boxing. You know, boxing has turned like 85-year-old women into killers. I mean, it's like these people that get proactive and it's a great metaphor for fighting back. It's a movement discipline. You got to figure out how to do stuff. So boxing is a great one. I love it. It's not right for everyone, but that would be one. If you like Tai Chi, it's a natural transition into it, or maybe a martial art. I like the beauty of boxing. When you see a boxer that is really beautiful, like a Sugar Ray Leonard or Sugar Shane Mosley, those guys were just fun to watch. They just move gracefully. And I love watching people with Parkinson's box as well. The one thing you have to be careful about that is this an explosive sport. So you want to make sure you're protecting your wrist, your elbow, and your shoulder. Understand how to throw a punch before you start heaving punches at a bag.
And your head.
And your head. Okay, so I'm glad you said that. Boxing for Parkinson's doesn't mean you put in a mouthpiece and start punching people. Okay, it's like it's the discipline in the movement and the poetry of it, and you're punching a bag, or somebody with they're called focus mitts or punch mitts. I, as you can tell, I'm a little passionate about it. I love the sport and I love the discipline. So it's a great one. And don't be intimidated by it. There's that rock steady boxing that people are certified in, and people swear by those and they love them. It becomes
so
like
hard to do this though with the pandemic, you know?
Okay. Yes, it is. It is. Of course. Yeah. I mean, the clients I'm seeing now, I'm social distancing and we're not boxing. There'll be a time when we'll be able to box again. I do have Undefeated, which is a shadow boxing program for Parkinson's. If you wanted to check that out, that's, you know, it teaches the basic moves, the boxing stance, the way you move your feet, the punches, the head movement, defense. So that's an option that you can do. And the thing that's great I love about boxing is once you learn to box or shadow box, you can go to the park and you can just do it and you can improvise and you know what you're doing and it never looks the same. And it's like dancing. It's like dancing, but it's more athletic and explosive. So.
Cool.
My husband does boxing, the rock steady boxing online with Zoom.
Okay, there you go. Another option. Online boxing classes, they're out there. There's been, this is an explosion. My online class, I get people from Scotland, England, Ireland, all over India, all over the world. People are meeting each other online all over the world. There are online options for that. And Sarah King, our information and referral person, has a really great list of options for you. So make sure if you want something, so if you're looking for some sources, that you reach out to Sarah.
All right. I think that's all we have time for today for questions. Patrick, could you quickly remind us what the chair exercise was called that you did? The chair exercise.
I call it May's Stretch, M-A-E. My daughter's name is May. My other daughter's name is Kate. I've got to get a video on Kate up there pretty soon or I'm going to be in trouble. Yeah, so it's May's stretch, and yeah, and it's on my YouTube channel. You'll be able to find it there. Thank you.
Awesome. So thank you so much, Patrick, for the great information today. And if you'd like to learn more about Patrick's approach to exercise, visit his site at smartxpd.com. You can definitely find that on our website at pcla.org. I'd also like to thank our sponsors for this series, Abbott, AbbVie, Boston Scientific, Linda and Stuart Resnick, and US World Meds. And thank you all for joining Parkinson's Community Los Angeles today for our Let's Talk Parkinson's series. We will be announcing upcoming events through our email list on our website at www.pcla.org, and I think it's on our screen right now, and our Facebook and Instagram pages. If you're not following, definitely follow. We post a lot of updates there as well. And if you aren't already signed up for our email list and our monthly email newsletter, you can also do that on our website as well. And thank you, everyone. Stay safe and stay well.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.